Oh, excuse me. Didn't realize this thing was on. Uh, sorry, some sniffing some Lady Gaga there. Hate when I get caught doing that. Happens sometimes. Uh, whoops. Anyway, yeah. Welcome to the Tonto's Demise Week 8 recap. Week 8. Losing track of the weeks. These weeks are flying by. We only have 5 regular season games left to go. This week, we only had one team go over 200 points because the only 2 big scorers really this week were on that team. Everybody else was actually in the all the teams were in the same scoring range. Let's see, around 170, 165 to 175 in that area. Most of the teams were in that. Well, not most. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, 5 or 6. Half the league was in that ballpark there. Scoring has been kind of down again. We had a couple low 100 scores, a 130, 107, 117, 126. So yeah, scoring, I mean, we were crazy the first couple weeks. There were multiple 200-point scores every week for the first couple weeks, I believe. But things have kind of trailed off for whatever reasons. I'm not exactly certain. But that's just the way it's gone. Ow. I just scratched myself. But anyway, I think that's about it. There really wasn't anything. It was kind of like, I think last Sunday the early games were kind of exciting, but this Sunday the games were just kind of meh. Nothing real exciting. I guess unless I said it was only exciting for Brian because DK Metcalf and Dalvin Cook were really the only players who really impressed this past week, really popped off and had big games and made you happy. Everything else was kind of meh. Again, we had some injuries, things going on, COVID stuff coming up this week now too. So we will see how that plays out through the course of this week. Try to think, there was some things I was supposed to address. I think it was the Patrick Mahomes trade, getting rid of him because Gags had Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. I think that the guys wanted to know if that influenced my decision at all, and the answer is no. I was able to get Hopkins, potentially the number one potentially the wide receiver 1, if not top 3 this year. As someone who's had Mahomes for his career so far up to this, until the past few weeks, yeah, he's gonna have those. He's gonna pop off for those 70-pointers every now and then, but yeah, he's reliable. But you can get consistent. He's not gonna pop off for those big numbers all the time. You can get consistent number. There definitely are other quarterbacks that you can get consistent numbers from, and frankly, it was just taking advantage of a situation where Jim had Matt Ryan on a slump. He lost Eckler, and Sammy Watkins was going out with an injury. So really, offering him Jackson, who looked like he was going to be the best replacement temporarily for Eckler there. Trade Mahomes, got Matt Ryan in exchange. And then Mecole Hardman. Again, Sammy Watkins was going out for a couple weeks, which he's still currently out, which made him a more trade relevant player. Honestly, sorry, Jim. I don't even know if you listen to these at all, but I would have. I was expecting that was my lowball offer, Miko Hardman. I was expecting you to come back for maybe T Higgins or something like that, but you took that first offer, and hey, it is what it is. Yeah, I was not concerned about Tyreek and Kelsey both being on Gag's team. Said if I've got a good quarterback who can put up points, the rest of my lineup is good enough. I think that those guys, it didn't. Of course, it didn't happen this week, but the rest of my lineup, it was worth making it overall, making it a little bit stronger. And really, that was just the intent: getting Hopkins and being able. If I hadn't gotten Matt Ryan, probably don't make that trade. Just because his potential is not as high as Patrick Mahomes, obviously, but he's definitely he's just as likely to pop off for 60 to 70 points, especially when Ridley and Julio are both healthy. So again, just taking advantage of the opportunity there where Matt Ryan had been in a slump for a couple weeks, and Mighty Midgets were probably desperate to shake things up, and I was able to just take advantage of that situation. Just thinking about down the road, if Gags has those guys, so that it's Disco's problem now, assuming he makes the playoffs, but I mean, there is something to be said for that theory that you don't want your opponent having your quarterbacks pass catchers, but I think if the rest of your lineup is strong enough, that's able to balance some of that stuff out. But as it always, every week, doesn't matter, playoffs, regular season, you need your guys to show up, all of them, and if you're going to get a win. So I think having a stronger overall lineup is more appealing than having a guy who's not let's say boomer bust, but he can boom, or he can boom. I mean, I don't know how else to describe that, I guess. But anyway, yeah. So that was really the basis for the trade. Wasn't really Gags having those. Did not. You probably won't believe me, but it wasn't. Maybe it was like a tiny factor, but if I could get Hopkins, it was worth. And said Hopkins and Matt Ryan was a combo that I thought was worth trading Mahomes for, especially since Mahomes cannot be a keeper next year. It was worth it to upgrade my lineup overall. So, and the last thing to talk about real quick here is obviously, I hope that we have all learned a lesson this past week. You may not, I don't care what your religious background is, your religious beliefs, but after this past week, if you don't believe that the fantasy gods are always listening, always watching the things you say and the things you do, if this week doesn't prove to you that they are, I don't know what else will. Because Matt, you kiddled yourself. First of all, you wished for Kamara to get dacked, which I let that slide. And now you said, boy, Calvin Ridley, that guy needs to get hurt. And he did get hurt, so wish granted. But I guess this was sort of like a Rumpelstiltskin sort of situation where you got your wish, but we're going to come back and take something from you in exchange for granting this wish. We're going to take something from you later on that's valuable. So, yeah, you lost Kittle for the year. Well, I don't know, at least the fantasy year, I'm going to assume. They're saying 8 weeks. and that would take us from we're in week 9, so that would pretty much be the rest of the regular season. 9 to 17. Obviously, we're done by week 17. Assuming he comes back, it seems like this might be a lost season for the San Francisco 49ers, so we will see how that goes. But really, Kittle has been already injured this season. Yeah, he had one or two. He definitely had one big game where he popped off. But honestly, I think you've gotten pretty much where you are without Kittle really being a factor in your matchups here. Maybe I think there was one time where Kittle's score was a factor in determining your outcome here. One of your matchups there, but yeah, really, I mean, yeah, it's a big loss. He's a well-known player, established player, capable of putting up those huge scores. Could he do it without Garoppolo at quarterback too? I don't know. Maybe not. I can't recall offhand if both Garoppolo and Kittle were missed time together already during this year. I'm going to guess that they did. I'm not exactly sure what Kittle's scores were. But the point of this is that Kittle has not been a huge factor in your lineup and on your roster this year so far, and you're sitting in second place. So yeah, it's a disappointing loss. There are people that can be picked up. You got Ebron still. He's done with bye weeks already, so you got an adequate fill-in. Ebron's not going to go off for 35 or 40 points, probably not. But you kittled yourself. I just wanted to keep saying. I enjoy saying that for some reason. I guess you kittled yourself. All right. The last thing to get into, just to mention briefly, which I don't really need to get into it, I guess, because we can talk about it right here in the very first matchup. Because Gags to Riches, the defending champion, we always talk about him first, and he was up against the Springfield Isotopes this week, trying to give them their first loss, which everybody had their fingers crossed that he would do it, and he does. Gags to Riches knocks off the Springfield Isotopes this week. No more unbeaten teams. Final score was 174.25 for Gags, and 167.05 for the Isotopes. This one started off strong for Gags to Riches on Thursday night. Isotopes had Matt Ryan and Calvin Ridley. As you know, Calvin Ridley went down fairly early with an injury. Julio Jones had 20.5 points. Matt Ryan kind of had a quiet game, 40 points there for him, no touchdowns. So who knows what could have happened if Ridley had played the full game there. He was looking pretty good, but again, he did suffer that injury. That's just the way it goes. But yeah, so it started off good for Gags as Julio went for 20.7. Rest of Gags' lineup, he has Goff go for just under 50. Tyreek Hill goes for 25.8. Mike Evans, 16.5. Montgomery and Ronald Jones, your running backs, 12.5, 6.5. Travis Kelce, just under 25. Cole Beasley in the flex, 4.5. Your kicker, Tucker, goes for about 8.5. And then the Chargers defense actually didn't do very well against Denver. A couple sacks, a turnover. They lost the game, gave up a lot of points. Yahoo says 5. That must have been the actual score because your score didn't really change at all on Yahoo here. But it wasn't quite enough there for the Springfield Isotopes. This one actually did come down to Monday night. Gags had Mike Evans and Ronald Jones. The Isotopes had Gronkowski and Suckup, the Tampa Bay kicker. And Gags actually had about a 15-point lead, with both teams having 2 players yet to go. Suckup ended up kicking 4 field goals. Gronkowski had a touchdown. Ronald Jones lost a fumble and then was benched for most of the rest of the game. But unfortunately for the Isotopes, Mike Evans, the Isotopes actually had a chance to take the lead, as Tampa Bay was driving down the field, got to about the 7 or 8 yard line. If Gronkowski gets a touchdown here, I actually think the Isotopes would have taken the lead, but the touchdown was thrown to Mike Evans, and that pretty much sealed the deal from gags to riches there. So wasn't expecting this to be as close of a matchup at the end there as it was, because it could have gone either way. If Mike Evans said that touchdown goes to Gronk instead, this matchup might actually go the other way. But that's what happened. Let's take a look at the rest of the Isotopes. Said Matt Ryan, 40.5 points. Calvin Ridley, 7.2 before getting injured. Deontay Johnson only goes for 1.5. T. Higgins, 14.5. Kamara, 25.5. Nyheim Hines shows up in a time of need. Gets just over 21 points. Noah Fant, 11.5. Gronkowski, just over 14 in the flex. Again, suck up several field goals. He ended up getting about 16.5, actually. Then the Buffalo Bills defense, Yahoo says 8. I believe we jumped up about 6 or so to 14, 15 points, something like that. But yeah, again, this matchup was actually closer than thought it would be there on Monday night. But really, said Ridley got injured, but I think the bigger factor here, again, Deontay Johnson, only 1 catch at the very end of the game. I did mention this a little bit on the line app. The points to win for the Isotopes are there on the bench. Aaron Rodgers actually got 50. He actually outscored Matt Ryan by 12, which would have covered the difference in this matchup. Also, Mecole Hardman, he actually had 22.5 points in a great matchup against the Jets. Some people might wonder, bench Deontay Johnson, who's at Baltimore. Not definitely a possibility, but really, how can you? Mahomes lit up the Ravens defense earlier this year, and Deontay Johnson, when he's playing and healthy, which he was going into this week, the guy's getting 10, 12, 15 targets a game. You just can't bench a fantasy receiver who's getting that kind of target share, even against the Ravens. The difference here ended up being 7 points. So you think Deontay Johnson gets 8 or 9 points instead of 1.5, which is obviously very doable. This matchup goes the other way. The other thing, just to get into real quick at the end here, it was, again, I mentioned it real quick on the line app last night. Tyreek Hill in the fourth quarter. Why are you in the game? It's 28-9. You're crushing the Jets. They have no chance. Why? I said in the fourth quarter, why is Mahomes still in the game? Why is Tyreek Hill in the game? You throw a 40-yard touchdown to Tyreek Hill. So that's 11 points, 7 for the touchdown, and said the catch, the touchdown, and the 40 yards. That's 11 points. Minus those 11 points, this matchup goes the other way. A completely unnecessary touchdown for a reverse. Is it a reverse garbage time, perhaps? Touchdown for Tyreek Hill there. So thanks, Josh, for giving gags Tyreek Hill and costing me this matchup, costing me my perfect season. He would have had to start Hunter Renfrow, I guess, maybe, or Traquan Smith. But yeah. Well, I forget all the other players involved in that trade or whatever would have been different here, but yeah. This matchup was definitely winnable for the Isotopes, but I think with bye week problems and stuff, and they're obviously really going down, expectations were pretty low. You can't win every game as much as we'd like to, but that's just the way it goes sometimes. Gags to riches, he gets the victory. He is 6-2. He is in third place. Springfield Isotopes dropped to 7-1, and actually thanks to Yinzer Jags losing, they could have overtaken first place this week, but they lost, and the Springfield Isotopes, despite the loss, remain in first place. I'm sure much to the chagrin of everyone else. All right, since we talked about them, let's quickly go right to Yinzer Jags. Said he had a golden opportunity this week to jump up and steal that #1 spot. I believe he had it after the first week of the year, maybe the second week, I'm not sure. But he dropped off, and it's been the Isotopes most of the way. But yeah, this was a golden opportunity again for Yinzer Jags to make that jump. Who knows how permanently it would have been, but it is a moot point because it doesn't matter. Shawshank Athletics gets the victory. Josh owns Matt 153.8 to only 117.4 this week for Yinzer Jags. Some bye week problems there. Some Dallas Cowboy problems there. But yes, a surprisingly low score for the highest scoring team in the league so far this year. Let's take a look. Shawshank Athletics in the victory. He has Herbert go for 51. His wide receivers, A.J. Brown, T.Y. Hilton, and Rashard Higgins. I think Rashard Higgins should start going by whatever his initials are, so that Josh has AJ, TY, and RJ, or who knows, whatever his. Because we're going to call him RJ Higgins from now on, as long as he's on Josh's team there. Brown goes for 12.5, Hilton only 3, and Higgins, one of the big free agent pickups last week. He ends up only going for 2.5 points. Reminded me real quick, another thing I wanted to talk about was the bidding last week. I know the Isotopes were in there for some bids, lower bids, obviously not winning bids because Higgins and who was the other guy? Aguilar, I think. Okay, those would be good bench guys, solid depth. They've been doing okay. Higgins potentially picking up for OBJ here. Aguilar's been putting up some good steady numbers. Can he keep on doing it? I don't know. But kind of glad. I thought those were bids where maybe you'll get them, probably not. But if I don't get them, I'm not going to be disappointed about it. So yeah, when the Isotopes want somebody, they go out and they get them more often than not. Make a bid that's going to get the guy that we want here. So, FYI, if future bidders, the Isotopes go for their person if they want them. But you probably already knew that. It's pretty obvious, I would think, at this point. But anyway, back to no more talking about the Springfields. Let's talk about the Shawshanks. Gurley and Fournette, 10.5, 10 points respectively. Mark Andrews, 6.2. Rieger, wide receiver from Eagles, he is back from injured reserve. In your flex, he goes for 13.5. Gostowski, your kicker, only 1 point. Both kickers in this matchup, only 1 point. And then the biggest factor here, despite other than Yinzer Jags, most of his roster going for single-digit scores, the Miami Dolphins defense goes off against the Rams. One defensive touchdown, I believe, and one kick return touchdown. Both long touchdowns, actually. So Yahoo says 32, but you actually got 44, I believe, was the actual score. So that meant you got 95 points. Josh's buns, always strong every year, apparently. Josh's buns got him 95 points. The rest of his team, only 60 points from those guys, from the other 8 players in your lineup. But it was enough to get past Yinzer Jags this week. Let's take a look at him. No Kyler Murray this week, so Josh Allen, he only goes for 24 points. Amari Cooper, 1.5. Tyler Boyd, really the only other big ones here for you, your best performers. Tyler Boyd, 19.5, and then Devontae Adams, only 53 yards, but 3 touchdowns, 30.3. And then we've got James White, 5.5. Boston Scott? Just under 10 points. Kittle, 6 points. Thielen in the flex, 5.5 points. Again, your kicker only 1, and then the Baltimore Ravens defense. Yahoo says 8. Actual score must have been 14 because we bumped you up about 6 points there. So, yeah, disappointing performance for Yinzer Jags, said Kittle. He's gone for the year. Amari Cooper looks like he's going to be questionable every week for production as long as the Cowboys quarterback situation remains in flux like it is, which honestly is really disappointing. This, I think, what's going to end up being a summary for this season, the 2020 season. Not just, obviously, the COVID stuff is going to be a factor here, but I think it will also be remembered for just a lot of missed opportunities. McCaffrey's been out pretty much most all the season. Saquon went down real early. Michael Thomas has been hurt. So like the top 3, I think those were the top 3 draft picks this year. They've all been hurt. Dak was going crazy. Could he have maintained that kind of pace? I don't know. Don't really think so, but anything is possible, especially the way that their defense was playing and putting them in giant holes that Dak kept having to dig them out of. Ended up putting. I mean, his stats were crazy. If he could have, I mean, what could have been if the Cowboys could have kept up that pace, at least a fantasy pace like that, and because all those players, all of Dak's pass catchers are spread out through the league. I mean, Jay has Dak, Detling has Cooper, Jim has Lamb, Justin has Gallup, Bean has Schultz, all those guys. So that's 5 players who, if not lost completely, have been severely diminished for the season going forward. Who knows what could have happened fantasy-wise for all those teams and the guys, for those players and the teams that they are on. Things could definitely have gone different this year. Again, just a lot of wasted potential, a wasted year of all those great players not getting playing time. That's just off the top of my head, real quick here. Those are like the 3 or 4 biggest ones that come up. Stand out, obviously, but we've had lots of injuries and things going on through the course of the year. But those are the biggest names, obviously, and just again to think what could have been is I'm sure if you're one of those guys who owns the Cowboys players there, you're always going to look back on this year and wonder what could have been. But as such as fantasy football, it's luck just as much as anything else, and just a matter of surviving the season healthy and getting lucky more than just as much, if not more, than any actual skill and talent here. So anyway, so yeah, that was the Energize. We got through everybody there. Shawshank Athletics keeps his season and playoff hopes alive. He moves up to 3-5. He is in 10th place. Well, despite the loss, Yinzer Jags, he's 6-2. He stays, though, in 2nd place. All right, then we've got Disco versus Saquon It Ain't So. Saquon Ain't So. Disco gets the victory here, but Saquon It Ain't So actually had a small lead going into Monday night, but unfortunately, Disco had the Tampa Bay defense, and he only needed about 2.5 points. So the defense can't get 2.5 points, you needed at least 3. Tampa Bay delivered about 18, I think. So this game could have gone almost went to overtime. So they actually could have lost some points there. Said if the Giants had ended up winning this game, that would have been too many points. You would have lost 3 points there. You you would have, instead of the +3 for the win, you would have lost 3. And there would, I'm not sure about the yardage there. I think they were over already on passing. Probably wouldn't have been a lot of rushing and overtime here. So really, that's a 9-point swing. That would take you down. This matchup actually, well, even if we cut 9 points from Disco's score, he still wins this matchup by about 4 or 5 points there. So if that game had gone differently at the end there, not sure it would have changed the outcome of this matchup. But anyway, Disco, 168.7 to Saquon. It ain't so, putting up a valiant fight. He is obviously the guy who lost Dak and Saquon. 153.2. Definitely had a chance to win this matchup here. But let's see. Disco, he had Mahomes go for 77 points. The rest of his lineup, Galladay gets hurt and goes for 0. Marquise Brown, only 7.5. Only 1 catch for 3 yards, but it was a touchdown. Mike Williams, 21. Jacobs, 15.5. Taylor from the Colts, only 5 points. Waller, 7.5. Zeke, only 8.5. Carlson, your kicker, about 7.5. And again, Tampa Bay defense, about 18 points there. So really, Patrick Mahomes carries you through this one, but he's not going to score 77 or play the Jets every week. But enough to get past Saquon. It ain't so this week. Biggest factor here, quite obviously, he picked up and played Garoppolo, against which in going into the game obviously seemed like a pretty good idea. Seattle Seahawks, high-scoring team, not the best pass defense in the league, but really, so the 49ers, did they have any receivers outside of Kittle? Debo's hurt, all sorts of, just be starting their quarterback, considering all the sorts of injury problems to starters there, was a little bit, like I said, again, the matchup was tasty, but Garoppolo, again, with all the injured starters around him, not sure if that was the best move, kind of iffy, especially when you've got Drew Brees on your bench. I know he was in Chicago, but, I mean, Brees is a completion machine. He went for, obviously you can't predict Garoppolo getting injured in this game, and only going for 12.5 points. But Brees got you. Was he going to put up more than what Brees got, which is 53.5? Garoppolo, probably not. To have benched Brees, not an easy call. At least I think, in my opinion, he's an every week starter. But again, just because of those, he's not lighting it up and going crazy. He's no longer Mahomes level that he used to be. But again, having watched the team this year, again, like I just said, Brees has been a completion machine. If our league didn't count completions, Drew Brees definitely is probably not a starting quarterback. He would be a low-level starting quarterback, perhaps, in our league, in the twilight of his career. But again, it's easy to sit here, as I always say, and say what you could have done looking back in hindsight. But again, picking Brees over Garoppolo, not a good idea, and it came back to bite you. And again, you can't predict those injuries. That's just how it goes. Unfortunate for Saquon, because a normal quarterback score production this week would have gotten you a victory. Even if Garoppolo said he only got you 12.5 points, I'm not even sure exactly how long he played in this game. He really only needed to play long enough. You lost by 15, so 28 points. Just he said all he needed was long enough to get you that. Definitely possible. But unfortunately, it is, as Gags would tell you, and Gags' shirt will tell you, it is what it is. All right, Saquon's receivers, Juju, Corey Davis, and Jarvis Landry, 13.7. Corey Davis, 8 catches, 128 yards, and a touchdown, 26.8 points for him. Landry, 9.2. Your running backs, Connor and Henderson, 15 and 7 respectively. Tight end, Jonnu Smith, he's really cooled off after a strong start to the season. Only 5 points. Devontae Parker in the flex, 7.3. Lutz, your kicker, about 13 points. And then the Philadelphia Eagles defense. Any defense against Dallas this year is going to be productive. They had a touchdown, a couple turnovers. Yahoo says 27, but we bumped you up pretty good there. Actual score must have been closer to 40, 42, something like that. For Saquon, it ain't so. So unfortunately, that good defensive matchup goes to waste as said Garoppolo gets injured. And again, a normal 45 point quarterback score for our league gets you a victory this week. But that injury costs you. And Saquon, it ain't so, has still put up a pretty strong fight despite all the losses and injuries to his lineup this year. He is 3-5. He is in 9th place. Disco, he moves up to 4-4. He is in 5th place. Disco kind of on a roll here these past few weeks here. Next up, we have Possum Magic, speaking of teams on a roll, versus Darkwing Jet. And Possum Magic gets the victory. I want to say it's perhaps his 4th in a row. After starting, I think 1-3. He is now 5-3. So he's on a roll, knocking off Darkwing Jet 167.15 to an even 130 for Darkwing Jet. For Possum Magic, Tannehill, 36.5 points. Your receivers, Diggs, Lockett, and Mims, 15, 7.5, 6.2 respectively. No big pop-off this week for Tyler Lockett. It was DK Metcalf's turn, I guess. Tyler Lockett, 7.5 points there. He's pretty good for giving you maybe 7.5, maybe 57 points. Who knows? Or 37, 57, or 7. He's going to give you one of those. You're just hoping that you're not the opponent who runs into the 57-point score there, which I think was... Who was it last week? I can't remember. But anyway, I want to say Dub C off the top of my head, but I'm not sure. All right, Derrick Henry, 20.2. Harris, what's his first name? Damian? Yeah. Running back for the Patriots. Over 100 yards and a touchdown for him, 19.2. Hurst, your tight end, 10.5. Melvin Gordon in the flex, 10.5. Also, Bullock, your kicker, goes for about 7.5. And then the Kansas City Chiefs defense, Yahoo says 13. Looks like you're bumped up about 20 points there. So the actual score must have been about 33 or 34. Pretty good score. Probably expected actually even a little bit more, considering they were at home against the Jets there. Although you were starting a Jets wide receiver, so I guess your defense there. So who knows what you were hoping for. But all that matters is you got enough points to get the victory this week. Darkwing Jet said he only had 130. Teddy Bridgewater on Thursday night to DJ Moore, 27.8. Bridgewater got hurt in that game, but did go back in for a little bit, but still wasn't a big productive game. DJ Moore didn't really have anything until the very end of the game, unfortunately for Darkwing. He goes for 7.5 points. The guy carrying your team this week, actually outscoring your quarterback, Robert Woods, he goes for 28.5 points. Russell Gage, actually kind of surprised that you started him, but you got lucky there. With Ridley going out, but unfortunately, Gage was not able to capitalize on that opportunity. He only gets you 4.5 points. Singletary and Swift, 10.2, 5.3. Gazicki at your tight end, a huge disappointment this year, 1.8 from him. Just taking a quick look at him, week 2, he had 27 points. But other than that, he had a 14-pointer. But he has been low single digits for several weeks this year. definitely not the production you were hoping for when you drafted him this year. But tight end has been a shit show pretty much all year for everybody, unless you have Travis Kelce. It's been it's been mediocre at best for pretty much everybody else at the tight end position this year. In the flex, Edwards, Baltimore running back, 14.5 points. Myers, the Seattle kicker, about 7.5 points here. It was kind of a surprise pickup, at least for me, because I believe, not this week, but last week, Seattle was on TV, and I think, was it a Sunday night game or something? But they were talking. It made me laugh when you picked up Myers, because I remember them talking about how, and it was a surprising stat so that would have been week 7, that Myers had only attempted maybe 1 field goal in the first 6 weeks of the season. That he had more field goal attempts last week, which I think was 2, than he had the entire season previously. Just taking a quick look here at Myers, and they said just because Seattle has been so efficient in the red zone there. But yeah, Myers, he kicked a field goal in week 1. He missed a field goal in week 4. And they were in a bye week 6. So the first 6 weeks of the season, Myers only had 1 field goal. He had 2 last week, 1 this week. So will he be a productive fantasy kicker going forward? I don't know. But you're going to need some field goals to add in there with the extra points there. But you can't live off of extra points from your kicker. But just a funny little thing I remember, whenever I saw that you picked up Myers, remembering what they had said, that stat was kind of astounding to me, that he had only kicked 1 field goal in the first 6 weeks of the season there. But anyway, your Los Angeles Rams defense, actually, Rams get throttled by the Miami Dolphins in Miami. Let's see, actually, Yahoo says 10, but you ended up, I'm going to say it was closer to 20, maybe 21 or 22. So even in defeat, not a bad score there from the Rams defense. Couple turnovers, at least 1 sack there. But for Darkwing Jut, said your quarterback score only 27. It's never good when one of your wide receivers outscores your quarterback. Excuse me. Not used to talking this much, as you're all well aware. Running out of breath. Darkwing Jut said several players only go for single-digit scores there. 130, unfortunately, not going to get it done. But Darkwing Jut, he drops. He's 4-4. He's in 6th place on a bit of a slide, but you are still currently in the playoffs if they started today. Hopefully, you're getting Christian McCaffrey back. I'm sure if in week 2, if we had told Darkwing Jut that you're losing McCaffrey for 6 or 7 weeks, but you'll be 500 still whenever you come out of it and get him back, I'm sure he would have been ecstatic for that news and not to have lost his season without McCaffrey here. And he's getting him back just in time to make a playoff push here. So we will see how things play out. Possum Magic, he moves up to 5-3 once again on rolling a win streak here. He is in 4th place. So watch out for Possum Magic. All right, next we got Hillbillies on PCP, the big scorer this week, going up against the Dub C Hooligans. Just want to take a quick look and see who did Possum Magic play last week whenever Tyler Lockett went crazy. That was the Mighty Midgets. Sorry, not Dub C Hooligans. All right, Hillbillies versus Hooligans. Hillbillies, the only 200-point score this week. He gets the victory, 236.25. Dub C, still a respectable 173.55. Actually, that 173 would have been enough to beat pretty much every team. Actually, Gags snuck ahead of you there on Monday night. But other than that, the only other team besides Gags that Dub C would have lost to this week was the Hillbillies on PCP. Uh, yeah, 173.55. So anyway, let's get into what happened with the Hillbillies. We already mentioned Metcalf and Cook here. Recently acquired Burrow benched Roethlisberger against the Ravens this week. Ends up not mattering in the overall score here, matchup outcome, but the better play because Roethlisberger was about 10 points less than Burrow. But those 10 points basically balanced out by you having to start Le'Veon Bell instead of Jacobs here. So, but anyway, I digress. Hillbillies receivers, Keenan Allen, DK Metcalf, and Fulgham from the Eagles here. Allen goes for 21.7. Metcalf, again, pops off for 43.1 points. Don't think he had any long touchdowns there, but he had 12 catches, over 150 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Fulgham, another strong performance from him. Looks like he was definitely worth throwing all your fab at and getting him because he puts up another 20 points this week. Dalvin Cook, 51.5 points. He goes for 163 yards, 3 rushing touchdowns, a receiving touchdown, 60-some receiving yards. Yeah, 51.5 points for Dalvin Cook this week. Le'Veon in a revenge game against the Jets. Kind of surprising, disappointingly surprising. 6.8 points for him. Henry, your tight end, 7.5. Jefferson, the receiver from the Vikings in the flex, only 5.5. Prater, your kicker, only 2 points. And then the Steelers defense put up a pretty good score here. Yahoo says 25, but the actual score must have been about 30 or 31. So, yeah, solid scores for Brian's Buns this week. But it was definitely DK Metcalf and Dalvin Cook who led the way and getting you the victory here. Really, those are probably the two biggest performances of the week were unfortunately for Dub C, both on Hillbilly's team here. For Dub C, let's see, he had Russell Wilson, and perhaps I guess maybe this lends some credence to the whole you don't want to have your quarterback, your opponent having the receivers of your quarterback here, because Dub C Hooligans had Russell Wilson, who went for 58 points, but Metcalf went for 43. But I mean, again, if we consider Dalvin Cook putting up a normal score, let's say 20 points instead of 51, that brings the Hillbillies back down to like 200 points. So Russell Wilson gets 58 points. A quarterback score like that definitely opens up the door for your team putting up a 200-point score in whatever that current week. But unfortunately for the Dub C Hooligans, the rest of his team did not back up Russell Wilson this week. Robbie Anderson goes for just under 10. Ayuk, the receiver from the 49ers there, actually a pretty good score for him, 23.1. Allen Robinson, 20.5. Your running backs, Edwards-Helaire and Gaskin, 6 points, 13.5 points from Gaskin, who I'm just seeing now, he has an O next to his name. I guess, let's take a quick look here. He's going to miss 3 games with an MCL injury here. So, yeah, that's a surprising. Didn't know he was injured in that game. Didn't hear anything about that. So a surprising loss here for the Dub C Hooligans, who are already kind of on a slide. You'll have Robinson, the running back from the Jaguars, coming back from his bye week. So you'll be able to plug him in there. But you're losing Davis, perhaps. Maybe Davis will still be startable to get some points. Don't know if the Panthers are going to give McCaffrey a huge workload. Don't want him to get re-injured there. Not sure if their season is lost or not. Panthers there, don't know if they're playoff contenders for sure there. So they might not want to risk any long-term injury to McCaffrey there. So, but yeah, you're losing Gaskin and possibly Davis in a time where you need all the healthy bodies you can get. But you've got several wide receivers there coming back. So coming back from bye weeks and stuff there. So you might be so you'll be able to put Robinson at one of your running back spots there, and perhaps flex a wide receiver and still be in decent shape going forward. But again, Dubsy Hooligans on a slide, unlike Possum Magic. So for Dubsy, so he is going to be, he can't afford to wait around for production here. He's going to need it sooner than later if he doesn't want to see his playoff hopes vanish before his very eyes. But anyway, his tight end, Schultz, goes for 11.5 points. Mostly, I think, having watched that game, a couple catches at the very end that didn't really matter to the game, garbage time stuff, but points nonetheless. Fantasy players will take whatever they can get. Davis in the flex, 8.5 points. Koo, your kicker, about 10.5. And then the New England Patriots defense against Buffalo. Yahoo says 7. I'm going to guess the score was actually about 13. So, yeah. But not much that Dubsy Hooligans could have done this week. You would have needed 237 points to get a win. Not very often that a team's going to put up that many points. Just another, again, bad luck situation here for you. As Hillbillies on PCP had several players go for single-digit scores, but again, Metcalf and Cook, nothing you could do going up against those guys this week. That is just the way it goes. So, unfortunately for Dubsy. But fortunately, both of you end up with the same record after this matchup. Actually, Hillbillies is now in 7th place, while Dubsy is right below him in 8th place. So you guys are still fighting for a playoff spot here. So we'll get to it in a minute here, but a bunch of teams are 3 and 5. So it'd be some important matchups here coming up in the next few weeks for a lot of you guys as the playoff push heats up. All right, and then we had the Mighty Midgets going up against Ed Logger. Mighty Midgets trying to not be all but out, trying to avoid loss number 7, and basically meaning you have to win the rest of your matchups for the rest of the year just to have a chance to make the playoffs. Said that 7th loss guarantees a losing record. And unfortunately for the Mighty Midgets, they were not able to do it this week. They fall to Ed Logger. 120, winnable scores in this matchup. Defeatable scores, I should say. 126.2 to 107.55. So, excuse me. So, actually, well, Yinzer Jags, I guess, here too. But Ed, I was about to say, Ed, you played the only team that you would have beaten this week. And so a lot of people complain that they played the only team that they would have lost to. This week, Ed Logger played the only team that he would have beaten. So it goes both ways. But then I forgot Yinzer Jags had that low score there too. So, but yeah, really anybody else? Let's see. Nine teams that you could have played at Logger this week, and you would have gotten beaten pretty soundly, but you got Mighty Midgets this week, so. But again, unfortunately for the Midgets, said loss number 7. Let's take a look at the winner here first, though. Ed Logger. He has Lamar Jackson, 28 points. Ruggs, only 3. Cooper Kupp, 22. Sterling Shepard, 15.5. Kareem Hunt, 9.5. Gio Bernard, 22.5. Thanks to 2 touchdowns there. Your tight end, newly acquired Bryant from the Browns, 3.5 points. McKinnon, 14 points. McManus, 7.5 points. And then the Green Bay Packers defense, Yahoo says 1. I believe that was the actual score for the Green Bay Packers defense. So yeah, only 126 points this week, but enough to get a victory over Mighty Midgets. He has Tom Brady go for 50 points, CeeDee Lamb 8.5, Adam Humphries 0, AJ Green 4, Justin Jackson 17.5, Jamal Williams 18.5, but now he is on the COVID list. I believe not. I don't know that he has COVID, but I believe it's AJ Dillon who has it. But he was, thanks to the contact tracing, one of the people that they identified as having close contact with Dillon, and he is currently on the COVID list. I would imagine until he is definitely, tests, maybe he will test positive somewhere down the line, but until he goes a long enough span of time testing negative there. So, Goddard, only 2.5. Jimmy Graham, only 3.5. Robbie Gould, only 3. And then the Bears defense actually lost you points, I believe. Yahoo says 4, but I believe the score is actually 1. So both defenses go for 1 point this week because Yahoo says your score is 110, but you only got 107. So it doesn't happen too often, but unfortunately for Mighty Midgets, we had to cut some points from your defensive score here. So, yeah, just a gross matchup. No other way to just put it all around. And I'm sure both of you guys would describe it equally as well. So again, Ed Lager actually gets the victory. He's also 3-5. In 11th place, though, at the bottom of that pile of 3-5 teams. And unfortunately for Mighty Midgets, again, he drops to 1-7. He is in 12th place. So again, Mighty Midgets would have to win all the rest of their matchups here going forward just to get to 6-7. Guaranteed a losing record. And 6-7 really is the best. It's the worst possible playoffs record that you can have. So really, any more defeats for Mighty Midgets, and we will be clapping you out for 2020. So we will see what happens going forward. For Mighty Midgets, now it's all or nothing. One more loss, and we will be saying goodbye to you for the year. So, desperation time, unfortunately. All right, those are all the matchups. Already mentioned in the lineup and stuff that this week with the 117 eliminated from the knockout pool this week was Yinzer Jags. It would have been the Isotopes, but Yinzer Jags falls off here. Let me just take a quick look. So we've lost 8 teams. The teams still alive for the knockout pool, I believe. We have the Isotopes from Gags to Riches, Possum Magic, and Dubsy Hooligans. Yeah. Topes, Gags, Dubsy, and Possum, the last 4 remaining teams. That'll be decided in week 11, whoever comes down to it there. So we will see how that goes. Yeah, that's pretty much it then for week 8. Take a quick peek, as we like to do, at week 9. Since we were just talking about the Mighty Midgets, he is looking to bounce back and stay alive. He is going up against Disco, though, in a tough matchup. Currently, the projections are well in favor of Disco. So unfortunately there for Mighty Midgets, his season, at least in terms of playoff hopes, might be coming to an end very abruptly this week. But there's always the opportunity to play spoiler and maybe take some other teams down with you and get some satisfaction that way as the regular season winds down here. We've got the Topes versus Shawshank, should be a pretty good one. So, but again, I guess I can get real quick here. 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 5 teams all locked in at 3 and 5, 2 4 and 4s. So places 5 through 11, only one game separates you guys. So there's only fourth place is 5 and 3. There's only one team 5 and 3. So 11th place is only 2 games behind fourth place here, but we only have 5 left to go. So some of you guys who have the 3 and 5 records, I'm sure there are going to be some of you who rise up and maybe squeak your way into the playoffs, and the rest of you, so obviously not everyone can make it. So it's going to be a dogfight the rest of the way to see which teams can get those couple playoff spots here. Saquon it ain't so. He's one of those 3 and 5 teams trying to keep his playoff hopes alive. He'll be going up against Yinzer Jags, trying to bounce back. Kind of on a slide here too, a little bit for him. Said losing Kittle. Got to be troubled about your Cowboys there, so we will see how it goes. But again, you can't underestimate Yinzer Jags because obviously they are still the highest scoring team in the league this year so far, in second place. So any opponent going up against them will have to bring their best game here going forward. Next, we got Ed Logger versus Darkwing Jet. Ed Logger will try to move up to 4 and 5 and knock Darkwing down to 4 and 5, while Darkwing will try to get above 500 and move to 5 and 4. Again, Midgets and Disco there. Then we got Dub C versus Possum. 2 teams currently going in opposite directions. Dub C will try to get back on. He's currently favored in this matchup to beat Possum, so we'll see how that goes and try to end Possum's winning streak here for Dub C. Taking a quick look here. Dub C has actually lost 4 in a row. Doesn't want to get to 5 in a row. And yeah, Possum's won 4 in a row. Dub C has lost 4 in a row. So yeah, Dub C, you really need to turn things around and end this slide immediately and hand Possum a loss here and keep your playoff hopes alive. You don't want to get to 6 there, and because the closer you get to 7, the more nervous you are. And then what will probably be the matchup of the week, I assume. Once again, Gags to Riches involved in this one. I guess he deserves it as the defending champ. He's going up against the Surging Hillbillies on PCP. Projections are almost exactly the same right now, 179 to 179 and a half. So this will be a good matchup as Brian tries to climb his way back up to 500, and Gags tries to move up he's trying to get win number 7 and most likely clinch a playoff spot. And said Hillbillies will try to knock him back and keep him from getting it this week. He'll have to get it if he gets it. Assuming he gets it, you never know. In somewhere down the line here, though. So, there'll be some good matchups with playoff implications here. So for those teams that are 4 and 4, 3 and 5, especially maybe that'll be the matchup too. Possum Magic and Dub C Hooligans matchup of the week, perhaps. Said both teams on streaks here of 4 in different directions, but Dub C really needs to get this victory, and Possum Magic. We will see that it'll be these matchups for the most part are going to be interesting to watch how it plays out and affects the playoff race going forward there. So I see already over an hour, longer than usual here, so we'll get and wrap this one up here. There's been a lot of COVID news throughout the day today, so we will see. Hopefully it doesn't affect things too much going forward here this week. We'll see what happens there, though, so fingers crossed. Hopefully, all of your teams meet or exceed expectations. Everyone's players stay healthy, and we have another exciting week of Tonto's Demise football, and we come back here next week to recap what happened in Week 9. Approaching double digits here. only a few weeks left in the regular season. Again, that playoff push. Trade deadline coming up here soon. Gags has already had his implemented his own playoff deadline by using up all of his trades a few weeks ago here. So just something to keep in mind. The trade deadline is usually right before Thanksgiving. So we're getting rapidly approaching that time of year. So all right, that is it, everybody. Thanks for listening or watching or whatever you do. And we will see you back here again next week for the Week 9 recap. Josh, you better bring some inside the computer. I'm disappointed in you. I miss it. We need it. Bring it back. Make us happy. Give the people what they want. On that note, that's a good place to end. Come on, Josh. Don't let us down. All right, guys. Thanks, and we'll see you back again next week. Bye-bye.